Throughout this video series, we've been looking at creating primarily three-dimensional families. However, it is possible to create view-specific two-dimensional families to fulfill a number of functions. Here, I have an external wall ground level detail that I wish to embellish with additional detail such as blockwork and wall ties, etc. Revit does allow for annotation or detailing tools such as detailed lines and filled regions and masking regions. However, for any items that you may buy off the shelf or a specific product, it is highly recommended that you build these as detail components or detail families. So let's have a look at creating a detail family from scratch, and I'll start with blockwork. I'll go to File, New, Family. I'll choose the English folder, and then it's very important that I select the correct template, in this case the metric detail item template. I'll then select Open, and this opens the family editor. However, you'll notice on the Create tab I do not have the 3D geometry or forms panel or tools available. I only have a detail panel with lines, components, symbols, masking regions, and filled regions. Additionally, there is no option to create a default 3D view, and there are not additional reflected ceiling plans or elevation views. So this is a family that will be a detail component that is only visible in the view in which it is placed. I'll first start by creating some reference planes. So I'll create a reference plane for the mortar joint at the bottom first of 10 millimeters, and I'll then create another reference plane for the top of the block. I'll now draw some dimensions. It's always worth changing the scale of this view to make the dimensions and annotation more in proportion to make it more workable. Select the joint dimension and create a parameter for the mortar joint height, and then create another parameter for the block height, and then create a final reference plane for the thickness. I've chosen to have the origin of the family on an outside edge of the block. Firstly, I'll make some object styles so that I can align any other detail families. I'll create a new subcategory called Masonry, and I'll set the projection thickness to 4, and then a new subcategory for the mortar with a projection line weight of 2. To create the block, I'll create a filled region. Note that filled regions are only available in 2D families and not in the 3D model environment. I already have some predefined types contained within this family template, but I can always duplicate a type and change the fill pattern and color to the desired effect. Make sure I select the masonry subcategory, and then I'll draw my masonry. I'll just turn on thin lines. Now I'll create a masking region for the mortar because it just needs to be a solid white fill. Change the subcategory to mortar for the top line, but for the lower line I will use an invisible line, which means that the line will not be visible. And then for the sides, I'll use the mortar. Often I have to drag the line to ensure that it trims correctly. Click Finish Edit Mode. Turn off thin lines, and here I have my brick and my mortar. I need to add a parameter for the thickness. And now in my family types, I can create a new type called 215 height by 90 thickness. I actually want to be able to define in each particular instance of the family whether the mortar joint is visible or not, just in case I would like this to be turned off. So I can select the masking region for the mortar joint, select on the associate family parameter for the mortar, create a new parameter, give it an appropriate name. I would like this to be an instance parameter so I can amend it for each individual placed element. And I'll set this to the construction group, like so. I'm now ready to load this family and use it in a project. So I can select Save, and I'll just save it in an appropriate place on the system. Give it an appropriate name. Load it into the project. And now I can place this family where I need it in the project. In order to place from scratch, I can go to the Annotate tab, select Component, and then select Detail Component. And if I need to change the order, I can select on, say, this blockwork element, select bring to front, and now it will bring it over the mortar joint. I have a fill region for the foundations. I can also bring that to front to mask the blockwork. The benefit of using detail items rather than just fill regions is that I can add additional parameters such as this mortar joint, and it's easy to amend these families all in one go due to the nature of being able to add parameters, and I can also add associated data that I can use to tag these families. So that is how to create a basic detail item family to use to embellish the construction detailing in a Revit project.